Welcome back to the THNC podcast. I am Jonathan. I'm here with my colleague Mark Allen Kaplan, PhD, who is the leading expert in evolutionary media, and we're very excited to talk about Wakanda. It's been a bit of a delayed podcast, but better late than never. Wakanda Forever blew us away. It is a continuation of the first film in many ways. If you haven't seen our previous podcasts, I do strongly recommend you go take a look at those. The Black Panther podcast series of podcasts where you talk all about the evolutionary streams embedded in the first Black Panther and why it was such a groundbreaking film that really blew us away. And Wakanda Forever also knocked us out. It's not as perfect a film as the first one for obvious reasons that we can talk about a little bit later, but it's nevertheless an amazing, groundbreaking work, partly because they had to deal with the death of their lead actor and incorporate that into the film. So the process of making the film was an important shamanic journey for the filmmakers and for the audience watching it as well, I think. So we're going to talk about all of that. We hope you'll join us for this conversation and learn a little bit about what makes Wakanda Forever an amazing and we think quite underrated and underappreciated film. So we really want to bring some attention to it as well. Ryan Coogler is a genius in our opinion, and we're excited to see what he does next. But anyway, let's get to Wakanda Forever. So Mark, what do you have to say to start us out with this?
Well, just to come up with what you just said, I agree fully, obviously. But for me, the foundational thing here is this work is unique, I believe, in film history. The nexus of everything that was happening, the impact of the first film on the African American community, and then the impact of the loss of the main actor and the connection to the iconic role that he represented. So you've got the screen character, but it went beyond the screen character. The African American community, it wasn't just Black Panther. The actor himself was connected to this iconic character.
Yeah,
So
I
you've
think you
got
used the
this.
term exemplar, that Chadwick Boseman really was an exemplar in the Black community as well as the character being an exemplar in the first Black Panther, like sort of an
Yes.
elite level performer and inspiration.
Yes. So there was a great loss experienced by, first of all, the entire creative team, but then the entire African American community. And I think, to their credit, they dove in and faced the grief work full on. And this is pure shamanic media work. In our courses on media shamanism, we talk about the essential component is you use media for healing of self, of others, and for the world. And this is an incredible, unique example, because you've got this unique situation of the actor passing and the connection that this film had for the African American community. And it was already, the first film had already started a healing process for the community. So this film, the filmmakers really faced that and really recognized the importance of using this film as a way to process this grief for themselves and the community. And they even went farther and tried to extend it to other communities that had experienced similar collective traumas. So this, for me, is an incredible work. I don't think I've ever seen any film and filmmakers that have attempted this type of shamanic grief work on this kind of scale.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's sort of this incredible confluence and the fact that Ryan Coogler had the balls to jump into it head first and say, we're going to use this grief to process this grief around Chadwick Boseman and the loss of this exemplar of the Black community, but then also project how that reflects some of the grief that's felt in these communities in general due to their losses historically, and then to introduce this other set of characters that also have this historic grief. You know, the guy's grieving his mother, Namor, but also grieving the culture they left behind.
We've talked earlier about the shamanic cinematic expression of everything, everywhere, all at once. And if we could hand out media shaman awards, I would say that everything, everywhere, all at once would win the shamanic cinematic expression award, so that the actual structure of the film and the craft of the film was using shamanic approaches. But this film would get the media shaman award because it really represents the core process for a media shaman, that you take this wound that you have. So Ryan Coogler took his wound and the wound of his community of filmmakers, and his extended community of the African American community, and then went farther into the extended community of others in similar wounding. That is like the foundation of shamanic media work.
It's funny, we're both immersed in this book about shamanism and it's linked to show business called The Death and Resurrection Show. Actually just got a bump because Russell Brand gave a copy of it to Joe Rogan, probably to try to help Joe Rogan understand that he's working as a shaman as well. But a big part of this book and the argument is that the shamanic path is a death and resurrection, that there's a part of you that dies, you go to the underworld, you face a complete deconstruction of yourself and you have to rebuild. And by that process of doing that, you become a shaman. As you say, this is a work in which the actual making of the film seems like it was that death and resurrection show. They all had to dive into having lost their coworker and their colleagues, so they're all deeply grieving. And as they're making the film, you got to assume that they really felt it viscerally because they were so inextricably linked to this film and this cultural moment and this historical moment. And the historical moment of Black Panther should not be underestimated. I think a lot of white people don't really understand how impactful that film was in the Black community in America, and probably for a lot of Africans as well, I would guess.
Yeah. So, and to me, this is a courageous work. It took great courage for them to do this, for them to face the grief head on, to go for it head on while they're in it, is just miraculous to me. And in a way, yes, it's a flawed work technically. There are some flaws in it. It's not as cinematically perfect as the first one. But in a way, I would be surprised if it was, because the grief process is more organic. It's more it's more messy, and when you're going through a loss, it's not precise. It comes in waves. It hits you in strange ways. And so this film for me I could feel the lost consciousness behind it. I could feel their loss. I could feel they're in the grief state. And to me, I just feel it's important for somebody to say this out loud. You guys, amazing work, courageous work, and thank you for doing this. Thank you for facing the grief and owning it and using media in this way. To me, it's just awe-inspiring.
And that's not the only amazing thing about the film, too, though. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was noting the grief, obviously, because it's about that grief. I was like, wow, it's staggering. But I also noticed all of the evolutionary patterns just in terms of the structures. And something we talked a lot about the first film, how it represents characters who are mythic, traditional, it has a character who's rational, and has a character who's pluralistic. And all three of the male characters are some pathological version of that, and all the female characters a healthy version of that. So that's all very clearly modeled in the first film. And in the second film, in case you thought it was an accident, in the second film, there's a lot of examples of things that were mythic in the first film that get reinvented as rational in the second. And I noticed that all the way through. There's constantly, when she finds out that there's vibranium elsewhere.
I am still struggling to believe that vibranium exists outside of Wakanda.
Perhaps there was more than one meteorite. Our planet is covered of mostly water, so it's reasonable that the other one just landed there.
This changes everything that we know. The Great Mound, all of the legends and fables. Those stories are seared in my mind.
That sounds very painful.
Like, basically, get over yourself. So
And
all
really
that
the
kind
whole-
of mythic stuff gets reinvented in the second one.
Absolutely.
Even the battle, the combat, combat to the death in the first one and the second one. Shuri shows up in her Black Panther suit. She and M'Baku end up having an arm wrestling match, basically, and that's how they solve that she's stronger than him. And he says, we have a new Black Panther. He doesn't expect to be killed. He's actually evolved that much that he doesn't, in the first film, he actually wanted to be killed for his honor. Had to get talked out of it.
Yeah, and actually, Shuri, in this whole film, in the arc of the whole film, she actually it's her journey from rational to the pluralistic. She takes that full arc, and in the opening, that first moments, we talked about this, that first moment.
Right. It opens with her praying, even though she
Yes.
doesn't believe in the gods.
Yeah, and it's it's like there's a lot of research that shows that even if you don't believe in a god, when you're faced with a life-threatening situation, most of us will pray. It's like,
Yeah,
it's like,
there were
oh,
the atheists in foxholes.
right, yeah.
Oh, there are
But
no atheists in
that
foxholes.
moment, and it's just all the way throughout, it's her journey to go beyond that rational construct. Yes, it had great things and all that, but some things it cannot touch, it cannot hold. Some things the rational mind cannot really hold.
When she meets Killmonger, he's like, "You didn't believe in the ancestral plane, did you?" She's like, she's like,
Yeah, it's beautiful work. Oh, beautiful work. Oh, sorry, it's just
Yeah, and also it's a middle work. So for me, the first time I watched it, even though I thought it was incredible work in many ways, I was a little bit confused about the role of Talokan and is she supposed to be merging with him? Is he actually an enemy to her? And it's sort of suggesting he says at the end, they'll come when they come for Wakanda, the Wakandans will join up with us again. So, but he seemed like they were trying to put him off as sort of a sinister character. But to me, the whole integral focus of it is that they're going to somehow integrate. And Shuri is pushing him to integrate. Actually, she says, "No, we can't. We can't get together by going to war on the surface road. That's not a proper way for us to come together."
Yeah, I found that moment while Shuri was going towards the pluralistic. I found that at the end, he went towards the rational, just a little bit, just a touch.
Oh, he definitely went towards the rational to
Yeah.
yes, I have to live so we can live another day and continue. And so he does the same shift that M'Baku makes, kind of.
Yes. So again, as you point out, this film is filled with evolutionary shifts. One of the great things about the first one and this one is Coogler masterfully depicts evolutionary shifts, which is very rare in cinema.
Yep. Definitely not an accident.
No. It's
wanna
all over
talk
the
to him about
place.
it. Yeah, in
All
this
over the
film.
place. I mean, he
In
may
this
not
film.
hold it in that frame, you know, in terms of how he would, you know, explain it, but he's doing it, you know. And we talk a lot about, you know, the integral structure of consciousness is a natural evolutionary structure. So if somebody is operating at it, they may not be able to label it or even use, you know, the terminology,
Right. But it's rare to see it so accurately depicted, like someone shifting from rational to pluralistic, from mythic to rational. I mean, in this one, just the fact that the heart-shaped herb, she figures out how to synthesize it, you know, using science and technology to recreate this ancient thing that's been gone, you know.
it's all over the place,
So,
these little kind
so
of
it's the, but
shifts.
also this is a middle work. There's going to be a third one, and this feels like a middle work, like that's
Yeah,
unresolved.
yeah,
What's happening between the Wakandans and the Tolokans.
yes.
But yeah, I really appreciated they're bringing in another kind of historically oppressed group.
Well, it kind of begins to universalize the oppression of peoples and the impact of that oppression, you know, and that I think is a great kind of step, you know, to take it farther.
But also, the
Very,
Wakandans never had to deal with that. So they're actually dealing with people who were colonized in a way that they weren't.
yeah. But that's again a
So,
great kind of dynamic to actually hold, to get to see the difference
oh yeah, to see a black
between,
civilization that actually grew on healthy on its own without being oppressed and colonized and became dominant, you know,
yeah,
is very
yeah,
valuable and very fascinating intellectually. It's
yeah.
amazing to me that more people don't understand how radical Black Panther was, the first one.
Well, you know, in a way, that's also part of its genius too,
It's
because
part of its mastery. It's a Sufi masterpiece.
yes, because it puts so much under the surface.
There's so many
It works
layers that you
great
can
on the
unpack.
surface of just a simple superhero mythic film,
Yeah.
but so much under the surface.
Yeah. This one, unfortunately, can't get away with just pretending to be just a superhero film because it's so obviously a work of grief and trauma and loss. And
Well, it needed to be this.
yeah.
It, it,
Oh, it's brilliant. There's
that's
no way he could make another Black Panther. That was a zeitgeist moment. That film slid right in. It was perfect.
yeah, yeah. And this film was the film for this moment.
Angela
Yeah,
Bassett was amazing in this film.
yes, she was. Yeah,
I'm glad she got nominated.
yeah. And this was a very female centric work as well, you know. And I think they did a good job of playing with that shift. Um, and you know, it's like for me, it's funny. It's like hard for me to talk about anything else because I'm so touched and overwhelmed by the grief work.
Hmm.
And
That's the
because
most
it's so,
groundbreaking thing in the film.
yes, because it's so groundbreaking, because it's unique in film history, everything else kind of pales for me. You know, yeah, there's some great
Yeah.
stuff in it. There's, you know, all that stuff, but whew, I'm just like, wow, man, this is amazing.
Yep. That's another staggering work. Sorry it took us so long to talk about it, but hopefully you'll see the film if you haven't. If you
Yeah.
have, see it
Well, for
again.
me, this moment is the great moment to talk about it because after going through the award season and realizing, you know, that it wasn't recognized. So this is something I want to talk about. It wasn't recognized because we usually recognize in the awards and stuff like that artistry, the artistry of the work, and which is great, and I'm all for that. But this is not about artistry. This is about transformation and um, process work, using cinema for grief work. There's no kind of category to fit that in the normal kind of cinematic framing.
On the other hand, it was a miracle that Everything Everywhere All at Once won everything, almost everything.
You know
So
what?
that's
I had a feeling it could do it. It could do it. And I'm
well.
very
When did
happy
you
it
have that
did.
feeling? When did you have that feeling on Oscar night, or like?
No, actually from the beginning, because, and I know this doesn't sound, it doesn't sound perfect, whatever, but because it was a minority woman lead role, not just um, minority, a woman, and older. Okay, that is like honey to the Oscars. You've got these three, and I know it's not, but it's like, and so this is a brilliant cinematic work, but it also had those three components, which the Oscars love that stuff.
This one does too, though. It's got Angela Bassett, who's an older minority. But this is a
Yeah, but
Marvel film,
she's
so
not the main pivotal
right.
character.
Hmm.
Fury is
Hmm.
really in this work. She's the kind of the main
Hmm.
protagonist,
Yep.
Whereas Everything Everywhere All at Once, the main protagonist is
Right.
an older Asian
Right. But if
American
that
woman.
hadn't won 7 awards, I would have probably said the Academy just doesn't know how to handle evolutionary media. But this is like Everything Everywhere All at Once is so clearly a work of evolutionary media that they recognized it. So yeah, I think Wakanda Forever, part of it also is that people have a Marvel filter, so it's like a popular work. Oh, it's a Marvel movie, so they just assume it's trivial. They don't look for that. They don't really understand that a lot of amazing work can happen within the Marvel context.
Yeah, and of course, and also just to be fair though, it is not a groundbreaking cinematic work in terms of the cinematic expression. The first one was groundbreaking in terms of cinematic expression. This one wasn't, but it couldn't be. This one was more about the grief work, and that isn't, it doesn't lend itself. It's like, in a way, for Coogler to do this film in this moment justice, he had to let go of the art as the primary focus of his vision and drive, and he had to make the grief work primary in order to do it right. You can't do both in terms of, it's like, I heard him talk about the process and stuff like that and read some stuff. And for me, what I could tell is that he took the grieving part really to heart deeply. And that seemed like it was his primary kind of focus. Was I I feel like he recognized the importance of the work to these other human beings. That it was like, I felt his sense of responsibility to heal the wound created by actually the healing done by the first work and the loss of the icon that was connected to that original healing. He had to kind of fix it, because he started this thing, and he put it out there and it was powerful, but then part of it was shifted because of the loss. And so he profoundly and rightly saw that that had to be his prime focus, that it had to be, the wound was the most important thing, and rightly so. So that's why I think he was very courageous in this.
Quite a staggering work. I think it's actually a work of great artistry as well, although there are pieces of it that don't work as well, obviously. But
Oh no, yeah, I mean,
still
there's
a beautiful
incredible
work.
shots like this one behind me,
Yeah.
and no, I mean, cinematically it's beautiful and very well done, but it's secondary to the grief work as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
And its cinematic expression serves the grief work beautifully. but it's in service to that. It's not, it doesn't overshadow it. Rightly so.
Yep. Well, all right, there you go. So that's what we think. I think it's a groundbreaking work of a multi-dimensional grief work because it's about the grief of the characters and the actors and the audience all at once.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you've got the filmmaker in grief, the creative team in grief, you've got the African American community in grief and beyond, and you've got the character loss and the other characters in the story in grief. So you've got, I mean, this is multi-dimensional grief work on so many different levels. And that is just mind-blowing to me.
Yep. I agree. All right. Well, thanks for joining us again. Anything else to add before we depart? I think we've said what we want to say most.
Bravo
Bravo
guys.
to Ryan Coogler. As I say,
And the whole team.
I heard he's doing a remake of the X-Files, the TV series, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to anything he does.
Anything Ryan Coogler does, exactly. I'm in for it. He's a genius. Yeah. All right, guys, check out our previous podcast if you haven't, and we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.